All right, so talking about this, who actually read this paper? A couple of people? Okay, good. So like here, let's do a quick little test on like how you actually ended up like reading it. So pull out a piece of paper, right? This might be extra credit, depending on how people do on it. So let's answer these 6 questions. Well, I did tell y'all to read it, so like. Oh, well, like it's listed on the syllabus, so like which that's a legally binding contract, so whatever. Yeah.
Legally binding? No. I'd absolutely not. I can't sign it.
Actually, you know what? Like it is the fact that you didn't drop this class. It actually is a legally binding contract. Like read state law. It's kind of interesting. It's yeah. Hey, so vote for people. Yeah.
What name this time?
Huh?
Middle Latin. First and middle.
Yeah. First, middle, and nickname. All right. Here, let's be quiet. So let's look at this. What is the relative risk ratio that was recommended by the paper in order to determine if something is a big deal or not? The next one. Who is to blame for the misrepresentation of epidemiological studies? The next thing. What do the scientists suggest the public do regarding epidemiologic findings? Next, what is a risk behavior that alcohol drinkers tend to do that was addressed in the Epidemiology Faces Limits paper? Next, when asked about dietary behaviors, what do underweight and overweight individuals tend to do? They tend to do similar things, just in different directions. Hopefully that makes sense. And lastly, what has happened in recent times regarding statistics and epidemiology? No, I understand. That's good. That's why this is potentially for extra credit. 0? Is it graded? No, like it's not going to work for, well, I mean, it's not going to work against you. So. All right, does everyone feel like you answered everything? Good? Okay, so if you answered it, pass it on down. I'm going to pick them up. At the end of this lecture, I'm going to tell you what all the answers are.
That's funny.
Did someone write down something funny?
Yeah.
Okay. What? Nothing? Okay. Like, that's, oh, that's all good. All good. All good. Okay, so this paper, written by a guy named Gary Taubes. He's actually relatively famous. He's a science writer. He got his undergraduate degree in physics. So he's a relatively smart guy. So let's start looking at, thank you. Looking at what epidemiology even means. So this is something that I would definitely know, what epidemiology means. So it means above, demos means people, logia means study of, right? So really, it's just a branch of medicine which deals with the incidence, distribution, and possible control of diseases and other factors relating to health. So like we'll get into this a little bit. Like say eating eggs. What risk of like heart attack does eating eggs give you? What risk of like lung cancer does secondhand smoke give you? Things like that. Those would be different types of things that epidemiology would do. In particular, epidemiology studies are almost always cross-sectional studies with extremely large N sizes. So that means that they take a cross-section of various individuals, a large amount of individuals, ask them about certain things, and then like relate them to different like disease outcomes, say. So like I would ask all of you, how many times like in the past like year have you eaten bacon? And I would also measure like how many cardiac events you've had in the past like year or so. Right? Does that make sense? Like that would be a fairly like simplistic and pretty much bad way how an epidemiology study would be done, but it actually is done quite a bit. So this paper, it starts off talking about radon. Now, why should we care about radon? We really shouldn't, but I think, well, like actually we probably should care about radon. I shouldn't have said that that way. But how it starts off, I want to read this to you since most of you didn't read the paper. This is the opening sentence in there. So the news about health risks comes thick and fast these days, and it seems all constitutionally contradictory. In January of last year, so I think this paper was written in 2002, so 2001, so many moons passed. For instance, a Swedish study found a significant association between residential radon exposure and lung cancer. However, a Canadian study didn't. So would there be any reason for us to think that radon causes lung cancer, but only in Sweden? Does that make sense? Right? So like both of these are like epidemiology studies that like Gary Towns is referencing right here. But for whatever reason, one found a pro, another found a con. Right? So that happens quite a bit. So there are conflicting findings in numerous things right here. So like here, let's read this really quick. Over the years, such studies have come up with a mind-numbing array of potential disease-causing agents from hair dyes. Like does anyone in here dye their hair? Just me? Okay, cool. It's all right. Wouldn't it be funny if I did? That's I actually have like one gray hair in my beard. So it's whenever I turned 30, it was pretty awesome. Hair dyes. Do hair dyes cause cancer? What does anybody think? You don't have to look at me like that. Okay, I'm not going to look at you anymore. All right, hair dyes. Do they cause cancer? Who knows, right? But it's been tied to lymphomas, leukemia, myelomas, various things. Coffee. Is coffee good for you, bad for you? Studies always come out pro it or against it, right? So it's been linked to pancreatic cancer and heart disease. Oral contraceptives. So like certainly that's been linked to like PCOS or ovarian cysts or like ovarian cancer, breast cancer, numerous different things. What?
I said if I die from coffee, then so be it.
Right. So like that, I'm kind of the point of all of this is that epidemiology on like coffee being bad for you probably shouldn't listen to. That's the take home of this entire lecture. So like I'm gonna get there though. It's yeah. Okay. So all of these things, the pendulum swings back and forth, causing, as Lewis Thomas says, an epidemic of anxiety. So I talk to people all the time about this. Like one of my friends, she just went vegetarian for whatever reason, and she talks to me about like I don't even know what to eat anymore because like I read papers about like, oh, like this is bad for you or like this is good for you. Like maybe kale isn't a superfood or maybe it is. Who knows, right? Like does anybody have any anxiety about any of this type of stuff? It's like you don't know what to do, or like no one's really with me on any of this. Huh? Lunch meat. Yeah, right. Bologna, terrible for you, right? So then the question here, posed in the paper, like what should the public believe? What should the public believe whenever there's contradictory findings about essentially everything? So like where do all of you get your information? What's up, Sydney?
I was going to answer your question is what the public should believe.
Well, yeah, answer it.
We're all going to die eventually.
I mean, like, are we though? Like, there's a lot of transhumanists that are trying to figure out like how to like live forever and stuff. So,
I
yeah.
believe if you do whatever the hell you want while you're young, then what is there to bitch about? You know?
Yeah, like live fast and die young. That's one life strategy, right? So yeah, that certainly works. Does anybody know like Hercules? Yeah, here for a good time, not a long time. Yeah, numerous people say this, and like actually, this goes back so far. Does any like really? Humans have been wrestling with that idea forever. So like Hercules, everyone knows who Hercules is, right? Yeah, like Heracles technically, if we're doing the proper Greek, but like it's so like this no, well, because like his mother was maybe a hare in some stories, whatever. It doesn't really matter very much. Like there was someone that came to him and said, do you want to live a very famous life, however it's going to be really short, or do you want to live a long, happy life? And he picked famous life, very short, and he did like his 12 labors and all that type of stuff, and he died really quick. There was even this one survey, like not related to this, looking at people who were like Olympic hopefuls. Right, Lance, you know what I'm talking about? So like, help me remember it. They asked him, if you could win gold.
Like get a gold medal, like if you could win a gold medal like this year, but you're gonna die in 5 years, would you do it? And like 80% of them all said yes.
Yes. So like any of you, if you could win a gold medal in the Olympics, and for something real, like running, not like, I don't know, whatever.
But see, right, this is how I see it. So if you were to win a gold medal, but turn around and die in 5 years, sell the hell out of that medal and be like, dude, who wants it? Die with a shit ton of money, give it to your family, there you go. Boom.
If you like your family, like all of my money I'm leaving to my dogs, so that's yeah. All right.
Buy your dogs a shit ton of bones and just
Yeah, that's
pass
true.
on good.
Okay, so what is the public to believe? Like I like this class is obviously going off the rails, so this is great. I'm probably not gonna put this one up on YouTube, so that's cool. What's up, Mike? Yeah, Achilles was, yes. Yeah, like, his mother grabbed him by, like, that tendon and dipped him into the river Styx. Very nice, fun stuff. Cool things there.
Mind blown by the whole Achilles thing.
Huh?
Achilles was named after your calcaneus tendon. She was like, dude, is that a fucking lie? And I was like, no, like, it's real.
Well, so like, the tendon was named after him.
Right.
Right, so, yeah. But, like, yeah, that's, yeah. So, good stuff. Good. So here, just two quick things that I found a little while ago. So contradictory data is good for you or is it bad for you? So this right here, this guy's a doctor. He's at like some university in Canada, so we should obviously believe Canadians, right? Like most Canadians have read at least a book or two. Egg yolk consumption almost as bad as smoking when it comes to building up plaque in your arteries, right? Does anyone believe that? No. Well, like, hey, in some studies, the amount of eggs that people eat, like, it is the same in terms of a relative risk calculation as a whole pack of cigarettes. So that's a true finding in studies. Like, that actually comes. But that's only one study. Oh, no, well, like, do you know what's crazy? There's this one centenarian in, like, Italy, and he eats, I think it's, like, 24 eggs a day, something like that. And, like, he still smokes cigarettes and stuff, so, but, like, he has great genetics. So none of us have that magnificent Italian genetics, probably. So what's the point, right? So, like, eat eggs, smoke, and live to be 103. But, like, here's another one. Daily egg consumption may reduce cardiovascular disease. Do y'all see how those are like contradictory findings? Right? So like that's somewhat of a problem, right? What's up, Trent?
So now I'm just curious, like, which article here is more, like, more reliable? Which one is...
Oh, right. Like we would have to go into each one. And well, truthfully, here. So Trent's onto a particularly interesting question. Which one's more reliable? With something that I'm going to be revealing to you here in a little bit, this having an egg a day could reduce risk of stroke by 26%. We're going to talk about 26%, and if that's a number we should even pay attention to, okay? Because there's a certain percentage value that I'm going to want you to know, right? Huh? I don't think that's a good idea, but like, okay, right? So like right here, what should the public believe? These different individuals place responsibility on the press for its reporting of epidemiology and even the public for unrealistic expectations of what modern medical research can do for their health. So that's one of the answers for one of the questions that I asked y'all before. I would know that that's probably going to show up on the test. Okay? Cool. So like right there, the people who report the findings of epidemiology typically major in journalism, which journalism, the incentive right there is to have more people click on your article or buy your paper, like however journalism is done these days. So if we could sensationalize news and it's like, oh man, like eggs are killing you, right? More people are going to read that, especially if you like eggs or if you dislike eggs. Like that works for both sides. Like it's glaring to you. And also for like the public, thinking that okay, like all of y'all know me, like I've got a PhD, right? How many times have I been wrong about stuff?
A lot.
Right, man, that's funny. That's funny because I try to never say it in class unless I know it to be true. But whatever. It's so like I could certainly be wrong about a lot of things. Other people with PhDs, other researchers could be wrong about things all the time. So like thinking about medical research or individuals who do research in general on health, they have all sorts of biases, right? I mean, I have all sorts of biases. I try to be honest about them, but like you can't trust almost anybody in a lot of cases, right? So science is a slow process. Almost nothing is like that big of a deal, right? And I'm going to show you more things with like the replication crisis in lectures to come, but like right here, this phrase right here that y'all don't have, I just wanted to read it to you because it was fairly moving to me whenever I was reading it this morning. So many epidemiologists interviewed by Science. Science is one of the leading journals in all of science. Say the problem also lies with the very nature of epidemiologic studies, in particular those that try to isolate causes of non-infectious diseases known variously as observational, risk factor, or environmental epidemiology. So here, the thing that they note is that most of the big fish have been fried in terms of what we know for health. So this, for example, conscious determinants of non-infectious diseases are like smoking, not exercising. Like that one right there. Smoking increases the risk of lung cancer by 3,000%. Right? 3,000%. So a second ago, whenever we were talking about eating one egg decreases your risk of stroke by 26%, well, like, how many of y'all know people who smoke who don't get lung cancer? Right, tons of people, right? Well, yeah. So that's she's thriving, living her best life, I'm sure, right? Oh, yeah. It's great. So most epidemiology, the incentive on the researchers is to look for more subtler things. So tinier things that might have some type of relationship to some health outcome. Does that make sense to everybody in here? So like all of the big stuff, we know. We know smoking is bad for you. We know exercise is good for you, right? We know not sleeping is bad for you, right? Like everyone's good with this? Now all of these little things, it's effectively majoring in the minors. That's what epidemiology is more or less turned into these days. Is everyone like good with this? You're following me? Okay. So there's various biases and uncertainties. Right here, the editor of the Journal of Epidemiology back in 2002, I believe whenever this paper was written, said, we're pushing the edge of what can be done with epidemiology. So it's already like epidemiology faces its limits. That's the crux of this entire paper, right? So many concede that their studies are so plagued with biases, uncertainties, and methodological weaknesses that they may be inherently incapable of accurately discerning such weak associations. So we know the relationship between, like, say, smoking and cancer. That's a really strong relationship. It's so strong, in fact, that we know it's there. We know it's there, even though there's never been a randomized control trial done on smoking, like, hey, I'm going to make y'all smoke 2 packs a day, y'all don't smoke at all, and then we see how many of y'all get cancer, how many of y'all get cancer, right? That's never been done because it's unethical, right? But like that would be a really strong association. Moving on here, like epidemiology can tell you a little from a big thing, but it's very hard to tell you to tell a little thing from virtually nothing at all. So like eating an egg every now and then, that's a fairly small like stimulus on your entire life. Right? Like, does that make sense to everybody? Like smoking a whole pack of cigarettes, that's a pretty radical thing to do to your body, right? Hopefully, like everyone understands that. But eating eggs or eating kale, whatever, that's kind of small potatoes in like at least in comparison to that. So like with all of this, there will inevitably be false positives. So like again, like false positives and false negatives that like we talked about like before. So a lot of times like we seem to measure it to be true, but in reality it's not true. And hopefully everyone recalls from like the last class how we were talking about controlling for like multiple like hypotheses or like multiple dependent variables and the rate at which we can get like a false positive more or less. So whenever we do like an epidemiology study, I'm going to ask you about numerous foods that you eat, and then I'm going to make an association with like say Brussels sprouts and pancreatic cancer from that. Because like I asked you about Brussels sprouts, kale, spinach, gummy bears, like just every food that we could possibly think of. And then I would measure you and see, okay, like who has pancreatic cancer, who has this one condition, who has dementia, who has Parkinson's, all of that. And that's effectively what ends up happening, is like by chance we're getting these relationships. Everyone good with this? That makes sense? Right, okay. So moving on here. Gern, what is this? This one right here. You don't have this Greek guy. He was the head of the epidemiology department at the Harvard School of Public Health, and he says that studies will inevitably generate false positives and false negatives with disturbing frequencies. So another thing he said, and this is really just because I've read some things that this guy said before, and he's a very funny gentleman. So he talked about epidemiologists, and he said that they're fast becoming a nuisance to society. And that they're becoming such a nuisance that people aren't taking them seriously anymore. Because like there might be some relationships that are really important, but you know, like if every other week it's like, hey, this is good for you, hey, this is bad for you, then that's hard to make like a relationship with. So what to do about all of this type of stuff? So this is the recommendation from Gary Taubes and various epidemiologists. As a solution, the different individuals said, be more skeptical of epidemiologic findings, and epidemiologists need to be more skeptical about their own findings, right? So in here, I think everyone is pretty like well aware. Whenever I showed you the thing about like eggs being bad for you or eggs being good for you, like almost all of you were like, oh, but it depends. Oh, it was only the egg yolks, I heard someone say. Oh, like it was only one egg for the stroke, right? Right. So Sydney, obviously genius over here, right? So great stuff with that. So like with observational science, it is based on like some good ideas, right? So I think all of us would agree. Now like disagree with me if you actually disagree with me, right? So what we eat, drink, breathe, and all of that type of stuff, like the relationships that we have, the amount of hours that you sleep at night, that might have some impact on different illnesses. Right, like everyone would somewhat agree with that. Like smoking less would probably be a good idea. Like eating like more vegetables is probably a good idea. Doing more exercise is probably a good idea, right? Like everyone good with this? Like smoking less cigarettes. Maybe not entirely stopping smoking, but maybe that is a good idea as well, but who knows, right? So all of that is like good assumptions. However, here's a big thing. Confounding variables. So here, I love that Gary Taubes is talking about confounding variables because this is always the biggest stuff to me. So confounding factors are the hidden variable in the populations being studied, which can easily generate an association that may be real but is not what the epidemiologist thinks it is. So here's one thing, for example, gosh. What is it? I think all of you like have heard me talk numerous times about the like the aerobic capacity in smoking cigarettes and like the rate of death from that, right? So really the only people, huh? Oh no, well like right. That was from a previous study, um, but it seems to be that the people that actually die from smoking just have really low aerobic capacities or VO2 maxes. So it might just be that. And like, in fact, if your VO2 max aerobic capacity is at a certain level, 8 METs is like what the peak is for like middle-aged men. It doesn't seem like the rates of cancer and death are that high. Like they almost disappear whenever whenever your aerobic capacity is that. So what is it? Is it the smoking, or is it the low aerobic capacity, or is it some type of interaction between smoking and having a lower aerobic capacity? It's probably that one, but like we would have to do some fairly sophisticated research to figure that out. So like here, whenever there is like a study, like this is one of the answers to the questions that I asked you. What do like people who drink alcohol tend to do? At least during this time, it's a little bit out of fashion these days, but during this time, people who drink alcohol tend to smoke cigarettes or Juuls or whatever. So like if we did a relationship with like Juul consumption and like alcohol, like we might find some bad things because like those behaviors happen together a lot of the time, right? Does that make sense to everybody? So like which one is really causing it? Is it the Juul? Is it the like cigarette? Is it, well, like heck, I'm sure all of you go out and drink sometimes. Do you get good night sleep that night? For what? Right. So
After you drink,
yeah.
if you don't have the spins, you're gonna sleep real nice. But if you have the spins, expect to sleep
Spins. All right. Yeah, that's a super scientific term, right? Yeah. That's all right.
What's the scientific term for this?
You know, like like a prefrontal like shutdown. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. Yes, Eric. Here, hold on. Say that again. Semicircular canals? Okay, yeah. No, I mean, like it does make sense that like the higher the alcohol like in your blood, like it starts shutting down like non-important parts of your brain. So like your prefrontal cortex or your hippocampus, like we lose blood flow to those, so you actually can't formulate long-term memories if you like, I don't know, drink enough. So like it would make sense that like in your vestibular system it would like decrease the blood flow there. But like I don't know enough. It's like I don't know why anyone drinks poison, but like it's yeah, I don't know. No. It's
Never in your life, or
never in my life, and I've never lost a fight either. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
tough.
that's probably why, right? It's yeah. Okay, moving on. That's
Have you been in a lot of fights?
I actually have. Yeah. So, yeah. What's up, Stefan? Huh? Yeah, well, so like our mom actually broke it up. I have a pretty cool scar on my back. Like I got thrown through a wall. So like I didn't really lose it. So like that's good memory. Yeah, like it was a DQ. It was a DQ. It's now like Stefan's right. I would have lost that fight. Like he's a very big guy. So yeah, but like I think these days I could take him though. Today's actually his birthday. Like I'm not even joking. My brother that beat me up one time. Today's his birthday. I think he's 32 today.
So you're gonna wish him.
No. Okay, like moving on. So like weird relationships here. So like the Greek guy that like was talking about epidemiology being a nuisance to society, he even did some research that found a relationship between coffee drinking and pancreatic cancer. Now he himself, he published that, and he said, yeah, but like I wish we would have controlled for more things. So the study published over a decade ago corrected for smoking, which often accompanies heavy coffee drinking, right? So a lot of people have coffee and cigarettes, that's a meme, right? But only for smoking during the last 5 years before the cancer was diagnosed. So you could accrue cellular damage 6 years ago from smoking, and it wouldn't have been controlled for in that study. So like that would be an aberrant relationship right there. That like, okay, 5 years ago you weren't smoking, all good, but 6 years ago you were smoking like a chimney, right? They didn't catch those people that got through the cracks right there. So right here, I'm not saying that pancreatic cancer and coffee are related, but in given studies, if they don't control for the right things, like how long ago did you quit smoking? right? Then there might be a relationship there that's a little bit of a problem. They also point out direction of causation being an issue, right? So here, breast self-exams, like for like breast cancer, here's kind of a thing here, like. People who tend to do it more, they might locate it more, like they might notice that they have more breast cancer, or the other way, they might detect it earlier, deal with it. But like maybe a person has a strong family history of breast cancer, and that's why they do it. So if they're doing it because they have a strong history of it, they might have a genetic proclivity to get breast cancer, right? Or, like that would be an obvious relationship, or maybe a woman with a strong family history of breast cancer would be afraid to practice, so then they do it less. So who knows? Like someone might do more breast self-examinations if they have a history of it, or they might do less if they have a history of it, right? So it's hard to know the relationship there. Do y'all see the direction of causality for that? Like how it's confusing. So hopefully that makes some sense. Other things, tricks of memory. Many epidemiologists are quick to list risk factors for accurate exposure, which like measurements are virtually impossible. So meaning that it's very hard to measure all sorts of different things. Like how many blueberries did you eat last month? Does anybody know? 0? Oh, okay, all right. So that's why Wisconsin has a really high cancer risk. Joking. That's not true. Anthocyanins might not be all that good. So like cigarettes, that's relatively easy for most individuals to know how many cigarettes they're smoking a day, because you buy them and you buy them in packs and you know how frequently that you buy them. So like individuals who smoke tend to actually be relatively good at reporting that. But like food, here like something like here there's the no, that's a bit of a different thing. On average, overweight individuals tend to underreport how much they eat by 1,000 calories every day. Underweight individuals, or normal weight individuals, tend to overreport how many calories they consume by 1,000 every single day. 1,000 calories, does anyone know how much that is? It's a lot to get wrong, right? And the studies have been done, that's on average what people do with that. Like underreport, overreport, and the directionality that's, more favorable to them. Like that attribution bias, I don't know, I'm not gonna, well, yeah, I guess I will talk about this. I'm just gonna read it to you. People may recall their past intake of fat differently if they have just been diagnosed with breast cancer. So whenever we get like something bad happen to us, we want to attribute it to something. So it's like, oh, it must have been all that butter and bacon I ate. That's why I got X or Y cancer, right? So that's somewhat like, that's called an attribution bias or a trick of memory. Does that make sense to everybody? Like most of the time, it's actually hard to know what caused anything. From here, I'm not going to read this to you, but more or less from epidemiology, the whole realm of statistics has gotten a lot more sophisticated. So if we do super intense, really cool, sophisticated statistics with crappy, terrible data of people don't know how much broccoli they ate, they don't know how much they exercised, they don't really recall how many cigarettes they smoked, they don't know how much alcohol they drank, do you think really good statistics are going to help us derive any relationship if the data we're acquiring is bad? Right? Does that make sense to anybody? Like, I think it's somewhat bizarre. Okay, so here's the rule of thumb. From the paper. As a general rule, they're looking for a relative risk of 3 or more. So I would write that down. I'm going to ask you that. Relative risk, or odds ratio. So this is the odds of developing a disease. So 3 or more means a 300% increase in getting something. If there's a 300% increase in getting something, then there might be a relationship there. And remember, whenever I was talking about cigarettes and lung cancer, that was a 30, like relative risk or odds ratio. 3,000, 30, that's what that means, right? Everyone good with that? That makes sense? Okay, so rule of thumb, I thought that was kind of cool. to find. Yeah, I'm not going to look at that. But just another person said 3 or 4. That's the typical relative risk, where now we start taking data seriously. So like whenever there's a 26% increase or decrease in something, we don't pay attention to it. It needs to be 300 or 400. That's what relative risk means. Like, yes, Sophia?
So is this like the first question on the...
Yes. Yes, it is.
So it would be like 3 to 1 or 4 to 1?
Yes. It would be a 3 to 1. But like, so typically it's just reported, Sophia, as a relative risk of 3.
Okay.
Or, so it's a relative risk of 3 or 300%. Because like 3 related to 1 is 300% higher, right? Hopefully everyone good with that. That's just a weird, funny thing about how numbers work. Okay, so like right here. Which one of these should we take seriously? So like, let's work on this. So read this RR as relative risk or odds ratio. Like on your test, it's probably going to show up as odds ratio. I might know that. So high cholesterol diet, risk ratio or odds ratio, 1.65 for rectal cancer. Should we take that seriously? No, it's not 3. It's not 3, screw it, right? The next one, like eating yogurt at least once a month, relative risk, 2. No, it's below 3. So like right now we're doing like a guess and check thing of like, hey, is this above 3 or not? Right? Storm, you thought that was funny. Okay, cool. So like which ones are we looking at? So there, diet high in saturated fat, 6 for lung cancer in non-smoking women. Stress in the workplace, which one? This one is 2 to 4, whatever that one was. 5.5, experiencing psychological stress in the workplace and colorectal cancer. That might be somewhat of a thing. Oh man, like, yeah, 4. Yeah, sorry, it didn't go on there well, huh? That's cool. Okay, so like relative risk, like one more example and then like we're done. So this one, I've talked about this in other classes, health appraisal I've talked about. But like, here's how we need to think about this. Statins. Hopefully all of you know what statins do, right? Right? They lower your cholesterol, right? It's a lipid altering agent. So this Lipitor is the biggest statin like that's ever been sold. It's it's made tons of money, and numerous people are for it. So Lipitor reduces the risk of heart attack by 36%. Right there. So those of you who've seen me like do the song and dance, like I'm sorry that you have to see it again, but I think this is really important for us to know. This is the study where it came from. So it was the Ascot Lipitor trial. They were looking at non-fatal myocardial infarctions and fatal coronary artery disease. How they got 36% from this. In the, where is this? Percent of all subjects without an event. So in the, that's Lipitor. Atorvastatin, that's what Lipitor is. 98.1% of people didn't have a heart attack or have anything bad happen. In the placebo group, 97% of people didn't have anything bad happen to them. Right, that's pretty close, right? So right there, if that's all you saw, would you say, hey, yeah, like if you have high cholesterol, let's take Lipitor? No, we wouldn't, because like that's a 1.1% difference. Everyone good with that? That makes sense? So how did they get 36%? So you essentially have to put in the denominator the difference in the non-exposed or the placebo group. So 97%, that is 3% away from 100, right? So 3% of them had something bad happen to them, right? And then the difference between 97 and 98.1, that goes in the numerator, so that's a 1.1. So 1.1 divided by 3, that equals 36%. That's how Lipitor can make this claim, that it reduces risk of heart attack by 36%. So are y'all with me now, right? Like if we say something reduces the risk by 20%, 30%, even 100%, I don't care. I don't care. It has to be like based on the epidemiologists in this field. So not me. This is not me saying this because I get stuff wrong all the time. I love how she didn't notice I was talking. Okay, cool. All right, good. It's like, all right, moving on.
To be honest, I didn't hear what you said.
That's fine. That's fine. You can watch the video later. So right there, if it's not at least 300%, doesn't matter. Don't care. Right? Everyone good with that? Right? That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. So here were the answers from like everything that we were talking about before. So the first one, 3 to 4. So 3 is good enough for me, relative risk ratio. Second one, media and the public are like due for the misrepresentation. Next thing, be skeptical. Alcohol drinkers that tend to smoke, they over and underreport respectively. And last thing, more fancy statistics. That's all I have. So, yeah.